Welcome. I am Maria, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting, and this is Pain to Power, where we turn our struggles into our strengths, brought to you in association with the I Rant Network. So, there are uniforms we wear in life. Some are literal and some are invisible. And a uniform can give you authority, it can give you structure, it can give you identity, but sometimes it can also silence you. The purpose of this show has always been to offer counter storytelling. So, in a world where we are constantly exposed to narratives of harm, especially when it comes to policing and communities of color, we have to be willing to hold some complexities. And on this show, not only do we talk about power, we have to examine power honestly. And that's the reality is right now what we know is policing in this country has caused deep harm in our black and brown communities. And we can't ignore that truth. But today's show is about understanding what it looks like when someone inside a system that has created harm begins to question it and shift within it, and ultimately choose a different way of showing up because power can dominate, but power can also transform. Strength, we know, can suppress, but it can also heal. And today we're going to explore what happens when a man inside a system of authority chooses humanity over hardness, vulnerability over silence, community over isolation. So, this is what leadership looks like when it's rooted in connection. Welcome to Pain to Power, where we transform our struggles into strength, where we redefine what power truly looks like. In today's episode, we're going to be delving deeper into who shows up when the uniform comes off. I am very excited and honored to welcome my guest, the author and retired NYPD captain whose work today as a community organizer centers on healing, wellness, and building community-centered spaces where people feel seen, heard, and connected. Please welcome Derby St. Fort.
Hey, Maria. Wow,
Hi, Derby. How are you?
great, great. I really appreciate that intro. I almost didn't
What?
recognize that was for me. Is that Derby?
Absolutely,
That's
absolutely. That is Derby. That is all the things of Derby. And I think it is so important, right, that we elevate all of that. And welcome to Jane Lou. Welcome. I love that. And so thank you to everybody tuning in. Please make sure you subscribe and hit the like while you're here, and definitely share a comment. We're here to chat with you and to engage in a conversation. Thanks so much, Derby. Like you really are, from the moment I've met you, I feel like you have such a powerful story of humanity and how humanity shines through when we live our authentic
yeah.
selves.
I appreciate that because sometimes, we forget who we are, and it's moments like that I get reminded and it gives me even more courage to continue. But like that's just a reflection that probably is in me, but sometimes we forget. Yeah.
We do, and we need reminders, right?
Yeah.
I get you. I completely get you. I literally have a poster that I've painted on my room that says "Remember who you are" because we
Mm,
forget. We forget, we all do. So we need those reminders. And this is a space where you not only get to be reminded, but you get to share what you're doing with
mhm,
this audience of folks who come to Pain to Power, and hopefully folks who know you already and maybe
mhm.
are going to get some new layers to understanding you and your story. So,
Yeah.
well, one of the things I always do is I ask my guests about, because I think the relationship of pain turned into power is very different for
Mm.
everybody. So when you think about that for yourself, turning pain into power, what does that mean to you?
I mean, I think when I think about like the last maybe 4 or 5 years, um, I think that has been a big theme for me is really turning pain and challenges that we go through as like a way to kind of like evolve, but also a way to thinking about it as like just an opportunity to grow. But I've learned a lot about pain and challenges over the last 4 years, which kind of pushed me to be more of me, I would say.
Mm. But and I love that, the idea of we're evolving to grow, but to become more of ourselves, right? So
Mhm,
it's interesting, right? I talk about that a lot too. This idea is like we're reclaiming something that already exists. It's not that it's new, right?
yeah. I think
Um,
that's yeah. That's a big thing for me. I think like we come into this world to like remember who we are. You know, I
mhm.
think like we forget, and then we kind of get these reminders throughout our journey, and then to the point where we kind of like pushed harder to become who we were supposed to be.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, yes, and I mean, it sounds like obviously, like, in these last 4 years, there've been some catalyst in there for you. But
Mm.
before we get to the 4 years, remembering who you are, I wanna learn a little bit about you are Haitian American,
Mm.
growing up with immigrant parents. Tell me a little bit about just your experiences of growing up and how you found, like, your sense of belonging, your sense of community, since that is such a big thing for you now. What
Yeah.
was that like for you growing up?
I mean, like growing up and you know, being Haitian, having Haitian parents, growing up in Queens, New York, you know, although it's a very diverse borough, Queens, and there's people from all over, but um, there is like a thing where you know you feel different a bit because you know your family is of you know Haitian descent. You may not look like others, or
Mhm.
culturally there's some differences. So that early on, I felt like that was a thing I had to be challenged with. And although you know, to me, I felt like you know, just Black American. But you know, Derby, a name like Derby Saint Fort, you know, so you know, my culture just is very uh, apparent in how I show up and even my name. So, you know, being Haitian is something that is within me, and it has been a big foundation for who I am now. Yeah.
That's so important, right? Because again, coming back to, like, reclaiming yourself, that's gotta be a key piece of it, and I saw something in the chat. Do you wanna elevate it? Yes. Shout out to 1804 for certain. It was a good year. It was a good year, 1804.
Yes.
The revolution for certain. Um, yeah, so, and within that, like, what do you think was nurtured in you when it comes to understanding community in those early years?
I would say like both my parents, they both religious teachers in the community. So they were big on community and staying connected within community in Queens. The you know the Haitian community is really tight, um, just like you know the rest of the city in New York. But um, I think learning how to navigate community, understanding community. I think that was a big part of my upbringing.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So
But that's important though. I mean, and I think you said it, right? Learning how to navigate and communicate, like to actually interact with community, which is a big part of what
mm,
you do now that we're going to kind of dig into. So, it sounds like there was a strong foundation laid for you. And
mhm,
then at about 21, you decided to start this career as,
mm,
I mean, you're a retired NYPD captain.
yeah.
So congratulations, one on the retirement. But
Thank you so
but
much.
that's a journey. That's a journey of time. Tell me like a little bit about just starting off in the police department at that young age. What brought you there? What were you looking for?
Yeah,
And what are some of the things you experienced at that early
yeah.
age?
So like even before I start that, I'm gonna say like I never had like really a bad experience with an officer or
Mhm.
so I wanna say that because I think it's important because also it
Mhm.
frames out my decisions and how I view policing is really is not grounded on necessarily being harmed by police. I know a lot of times we shift to people have perspective of police based on their own trauma. So I came in the within the NYPD pretty much neutral. Also, I did know there was like some concerns from people around me, my community, and how policing looked in Black and Brown communities, but also I had like hope that being part of the system that there was also a something good in it as well. So I wanted to start with
Well,
that.
I'm so glad you did. Thank you for elevating that because I think that is really real and important, right? Like, because
Yeah,
there's layers to a Haitian immigrant and a Black man entering the police force, right? Like, I think you're very, I appreciate you
yeah,
bringing that up.
yeah. But but I end up entering 2000. I end up entering the NYPD. I joined as a what they call a police cadet. It's pretty much like an intern. So I joined in 2003 while I was in college, and it was pretty much an internship until I
Mm,
graduated in college, and then I went full mode as a police officer. Um, but that time was really challenging too in New York City. We had there was issues with jobs. There wasn't a lot of jobs. A lot of my friends were leaving college and weren't even getting the careers that they wanted to get. So me entering the police department was something at that time I saw as something secure. I did see it as a noble job. And at the time, there was like a lot of pride in joining the NYPD. So I would definitely say that. I don't want to lie about that.
no, but that's real, right? And
Yeah,
and I think where we start may not always be where we continue, right? So it sounds like we're alluding to the fact that that didn't last as long
yeah,
as you would have hoped it to. So
yeah,
what started to shift for you within
yeah.
in this role and seeing like being in the police, like in the department?
Yeah, so being a kid joining at 21, and again, never really having necessarily negative interactions with the department or with policing in general, I didn't really have a strong perspective of how I saw policing. So how
Mm,
I'm able to articulate what policing should be in communities of color, I didn't even have the understanding of law enforcement and public safety to even have a take on it. So I'm entering the police department having a uniform, getting a gun, but not really grounded in like how I saw policing. Any views on policing that I did have was given to me. It's given to me as a young officer by my bosses, by leadership. I didn't choose
mm,
it. Meaning, I didn't choose it because I didn't have
mm.
necessarily a understanding as a young man of safety in communities to kind of have a strong take on that. So anything I did receive, I was given.
What did you learn in what you were given? Like, what were some of the key pieces? Not necessarily what you learned, but like some of the big themes of that, like of what that is to be a police officer in communities.
Yeah, so I think some of the themes that was given was, and still I have some of them I still have, but it's a profession, of course, a noble profession. It's about helping people who need our help. It's about like protecting others. It's about community. So those are some of the positive things I received and what I learned. But also, I saw that it could be a system that could be overly harmful to communities. They may not system doesn't understand communities at times, and then sometimes it's just a lack of empathy that I saw at times as well. Um, and I think that's what I kind of learned as I start to make my own um, or create my own views of policing,
Mhm.
my own understanding, I would say.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I mean, those are really big things to go in with hope and then start to see these things that it sounds like counter some of the stuff you knew and you were nurtured to believe, right?
Yeah.
So just take us back to like that time of your life. How did you process that? How'd you feel about that as you were understanding that some of the things you hoped for were not some of the things you were seeing.
Yeah, I think, I think, I think, and this is what the book stems from, is 2019, 2020, during COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter protests that was happening throughout. I think, and that's why I wrote the book, because that was like the turning point for me, based on what I saw in communities, what I
Mm,
saw within the police department, and now having now, in my 30s, now really having at that point a stronger understanding on what I felt um, was good policing, was good for community, and just was good for like society in general. So now, based on my experience and learning, I was more grounded versus who I was, as a 21-year-old man.
mhm.
Mm.
What do you do with that grounding when you start to have it? Was it easy to live in that truth, or were there some complex things
Yeah.
you had to deal with?
So, and I think a lot of us go through this, and it doesn't have to do with like our jobs or careers. It could be family choices or financial choices or whatever it could be. Sometimes we kind of know better now, or we've evolved to have a greater understanding, but we can choose to ignore it
Mm,
because it may cause challenges in other areas of life, or we can acknowledge it. For me, I'm just not designed to ignore it. So it's really so my evolution and my understanding of policing at the time, I couldn't just like ignore it at the time. So I became a little bit more vocal, a little bit
mhm.
more um, edgy around my peers, um, and it's something I couldn't like hide. It just like it was just kind of pouring out of me. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
it was already in me, and the door. I opened the door, or something happened with the door,
Mhm.
and I think it's because I think 2020 was an important moment, and that's why I wrote the book. Because I wanted to share kind of like um, what shifted. I know, because I know a lot of the people around me. They say, "Hey, Derby, you're not like the same. You're different." And I get it. So the book is really um highlighting what happened.
Yeah. I mean, and there's the book, right? Captain Derby's Promise, and I think what you just said, right, comes out in the book because you have a foreword, and then throughout the text itself, right? There's something about the way that you clearly were
Mm,
communicating with others, that you were showing up. So to your point, like it sounds like you being your authentic self, because you can't hold back, which I
yeah.
appreciate that. I'm an interrupter. I get it. I like
Yeah.
I feel you on that.
Fast.
But at the same time, like there's a benefit of that. Like you're building relationships with community, and it sounds like you're building relationships with individuals, but you're also taking a risk, which I
Mm,
mean, let's talk about that a little bit, because I want to talk about the book, but I want to talk about what that felt like and how you manage that, because there's a cost. There's a mental cost, there's a physical cost,
yeah.
there's a social cost
Mm,
when you go against the grain. And I mean, we all know the police department, right, is a whole culture in and of itself.
yeah.
So what what was that like, taking such a big risk to push against a system that is so ingrained in the culture that it is?
Yeah. So, yeah, like I told you, like at that time I was very much vocal with my views, and like what I felt in my heart was better ways to engage the community, to address community challenges. So I expressed that to leadership and whoever. I even did press about it as well, so media. So at that time, I just felt the urge to do that, because I just felt that was it was just pouring out of me. I can't even really explain, but that's something that I felt really. um, push to do. Um, but yeah, but it shifted the dynamics. You know, you talked about like socially, within the department, how people move around me, and also promotions, opportunities. So being like authentic in that way and pushing against systems that are, you know, focused on being the same is gonna, there's some ramifications, you know,
Mm.
um, even politically, you know. And it wasn't all bad. It was moments where like I was like really, people were like gravitating and got a ton of support around, from the community, but internally within the department, it created challenges. So it created tremendous challenges for me, um, and yeah, like, you know, it's not easy, being in the system and pushing for change at the same time.
No, I mean, it doesn't. I think it takes a lot of bravery, right?
Mm,
Bravery to be vulnerable, bravery to be honest in a place where I think people applaud not honesty at times,
yeah,
right?
and it's
Um,
funny. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. No, no,
It's
please.
funny because if I if I could hide like I was before, I probably would. But for some reason, I'm not designed that way, so I couldn't hide. It was just becoming apparent, and also, the more I hide, the more it impacted my health. So I already understood
Mhm.
that. So I already kind of connected my health with, um, my level of authenticity. So I had to shift because I was literally deteriorating, you know, if I didn't,
Mm,
you know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
yeah, and it started emotionally, but it became physical, you know, because of that. So I had to like, I recognize that. I'm thankful I was able to recognize that. But I imagine a lot of us in this world who are not being authentic, and it's impacting their health. So that's just something that I want to share for those who may be kind of going through things and not, um, being the best version of themselves, and how it may be impacting them mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate that you brought that up because I think that's the cost, right? So
Mhm.
risk is something we take, but there's a cost to risk, and
Mm,
that personal cost is something that we don't always talk about as much, right?
yeah.
It's one thing to risk your job, but risking your mental health is a lot. But
Mhm.
so can we talk about that, because I think there's like multiple layers here, right? Like, because one, you're a man, right? So a man and his mental health, which we just don't talk about enough, right? We don't talk about a lot, and I think that's one of your goals, is to elevate that conversation. What do you did you take away from your own experiences of that pain of mental health
Yeah.
that, like, is helped you to also start to heal
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, so being in like a profession like law enforcement, like, yeah, I think there's conversation of, mental health definitely now, you know, as it play out more as a, it's, to me, it's very like as a formality to offer services and, you know, stuff like that for officers. There's definitely not conversations around healing though. And that, I think that was something that really kind of like pushed me to, another layer of like, you know, trying to understand what that means, healing. And you know, we hear, and especially in our communities of color, black and brown, like, mental health has been, a conversation that's going on for black men, um, for black women, black and brown people in general. But, uh, even understanding healing is, another. I think it's even deeper because it talks about like not just, it talks about all aspects of health. I feel when we talk about healing, and then we talk about like what's happening inside of us and our souls, and like all the things that like has shaped us or, uh, made us hurt, you know? So how do we, you know, healing from that, I think allowed me to be open to, other things.
Mhm. And well, and it sounds like are part of those other things, initiatives and things that you started to do differently for community.
Exactly. So as I started like really connecting with the community, and when I talked about the healing circles in the book with young men, what was happening, their experiences were triggering things that happened to me. So that's when I recognized, okay, I got to do some work because things that was probably still in me, but it was kind of buried. But now hearing it from others, I had to like really address was I had to understand it a bit more and then address it, or at least be aware of it. So like here I am, I'm doing this community work, thinking I'm helping others, but like the same platforms that were being set up to help these young men was like platforms that help me like also address like these things that were within me. Yeah.
So, but for you, do you feel like the platforms that you saw for the young men and for you were effective, or did you see there was a need to do something differently?
Well, so the platforms that I'm talking about were like the healing circle. So what
Mm,
things that we weren't traditionally involved with obviously as a law enforcement, but those are the things that I wanted to kind of partake in during my time as a in the
mm,
NYPD because um, I thought that was something that the community was asking for, but um, I wanted to be involved in like actually
mm.
in the actual create of the creation of it as well.
Mm. Okay. Well, actually, and that takes me back because I think there's some pieces here, right? So, particularly, you were a part of supporting Brownsville, the community of Brownsville.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Brownsville because it sounds like there's some unique things you saw and learned from the community itself.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Brownsville, who what you know of that community.
Yeah, so I end up as a captain at the NYPD and being assigned to Brownsville. So Brownsville has um, obviously a great history in the city, known for music, known for all sorts of great things, but also there's a lot of challenges in the community, social issues, and gun violence. So, me being placed in Brownsville, um, I knew that it was going to be a big job for me at the time, being a young captain, but also a young captain that was evolving as well. So I looked at Brownsville as an opportunity to like connect with community, but also like really um, be involved and see like what we can do as a collective to address some of these issues that
Mm,
are what I was seeing around poverty, around young people just not being supported in the way they should be, and then, like I said, the gun violence as well. So um, I think Brownsville and the book is set in Brownsville
mm,
is has been a big part of my evolution. Um, obviously, when they read the book, they'll find out what happens in Brownsville between me meeting a young person named Jasmine Reed and how that kind of sparked me to continue to kind of like evolve and become more authentic because I realized me being authentic, I was able to connect with community even better and be a kind of like a resource, and also them being a resource for me as well.
well, and it sounds like co-creation,
Yeah.
right? Like you're very intentional about co-creation with community. And you mentioned this earlier, but I want to come back to it. You know, it sounds like there's a difference between policing and public safety.
Hmm.
Um, do you feel like you learned more about that distinction for yourself through Brownsville?
Yes, exactly. So I felt like just being in Brownsville and seeing the challenges that was happening and then like having conversations with people within community organizations, community groups. I was talking to social workers, I was talking to people who were really grounded in public health, Excuse me. So what I realized was that um, being safe in communities is not just about um, law enforcement, right? We have to think of everything people feel they need to feel safe, and a home, a safe home, food, education, being able just to navigate their community. Um, so like my thoughts of, and I talked about this earlier, coming in as a 21-year-old, your whatever you learned about law enforcement was based on like who's around you, and then being an NYPD is based on what leadership was telling you. But being face to face, and really having these conversations and being open to um, think about community a different way allow me to like kind of receive and be part of a collective of individuals that are actually trying to address the issue, like not putting band-aids. And I think often with like law enforcement, we become band-aids. We do things that really don't address the issue, but it,
Yeah.
it may like just put a stop to it for a certain
Mhm.
time. But again, and this is when we talk about healing. Healing is addressing it, and where it's not there, and the issue's not there anymore. And I know that's not something that, when it comes to safety, that's not an easy task. So I understand that we can't like stop the all whatever issues are going on with community and crime um, that easy. But we can move towards um, those pathways, and often we don't, as a society, we don't move towards the path of healing. Many times we kind of take the shortcut. We take the
Mm.
yeah.
You are speaking my language, Derby. That is the pain to power language of this network, of this show, of this community of people, and hopefully growing community of people. Because that's it, right? Like I think that that you're talking about proactive efforts versus reactive
Mhm,
efforts,
exactly.
and that's a very big difference thing because healing and to your point, yeah, I mean, I think that we can never no one's going to solve every problem
Yeah.
and every moment of the problem, but there are things that can start to be done. And it sounds like your time and the commitment you made to these healing circles to learn with the community, you made an impact. And let's go back to the book, which I got right here, friends. I want to show it to you because I do have it here. And I want you to go and get it, especially if you're my educators, if you're parents, if you're in the community, go and get Captain Derby's Promise. It is such a beautiful story. It is a true story, as you said, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many layers to the story because you talk about the healing circles, but you also talk about a moment with this young girl, Jasmine, that really led to change. And those are different ways that you brought it into the book, right? But it's also what you experienced. So how did this process, not just writing the book, but the experience that you had in those moments between the healing circles with the young men, between meeting Jasmine and having these moments, how did that start to impact the way you were showing up even more so as a captain in
Yeah.
the uh, department?
Yeah, I mean, like just meeting young Jasmine at the time um, during this like tension between community and law enforcement. Coming from you know the killing of George Floyd and what was happening with COVID-19. There was a lot of tension, and at that time there was really, and it's still kind of the same at in some ways, but there was elevated tension between communities, especially communities of color and law enforcement. Um, so that recognizing that and being able to meet Jasmine, and she tells me during that time in that incident that's in the book, her fears of police, based on what she saw in her community in Brownsville, and based on just what her family's experiencing, and so her sharing that during that moment, and also me, even I was already kind of like evolving in my understanding of policing and shifting. It's in that moment where like I felt like, you know what, um, let me lean in more in how I show up to community, and how I and my views of policing. And I think that moment kind of like pushed me to another level as far as like owning. Um, I think that word's been coming
Mhm.
back often. My owning my authenticity,
Mhm.
and feeling, and showing up in a way that was more of me, I would say.
I love that. And I see Jane says authenticity is a must. Absolutely. And owning it, right? So what did
Exactly.
that look like when you leaned into it and you owned your authenticity?
Um, I think it looks in many ways. I think it's like I talked about before, is a urge that maybe I couldn't even push back on. So it's just like allowing the flow to come through. But also it's like not caring as much as before of what people thought of me, especially in a culture like the police department, um, where if you have counter views, that could be detrimental to
Right.
your career, promotional pathways, and it could cause like, who knows, it cause. I know people get big mad, if you share a different view of anything, and like the police department, especially NYPD, is like, it's almost like a religious institution. To me, that's
Mhm.
kind of like the best way to explain it, especially for me who grew up in the church. Is like there's some rituals and things that they do you're not changing, because, and it's just kind of that way. They culturally, changing for them is like a huge deal. So, um and the culture is so ingrained, within the system. It's very hard to shift it. Yeah.
That's I mean, that is huge though, right? It is hard to shift culture of historical culture, right? You're talking about the NYPD, how long that's been established, how long things have been. Um, and you already talked about like how there clearly was harm to you in your mental health and that experience with that.
Yeah.
Um, but in this whole process, what parts of you remembering yourself and coming back to reclaiming you, do you think you you really came to in this process of just the experience with Jasmine, the experience with the healing circles, being in Brownsville, the co-creating, all of it?
Yeah, I think I would say like, um I kind of like learned like who I was a lot more. So because I was in a space where I was like, I kind of like, um went within and isolated myself for a bit, because I wanted to like kind of look at like what was, um in a sense, happening, and like, and kind of really do an assessment. So
Mhm.
in that space, I was able to kind of like learn a lot of who I was, learn a lot about me, understanding um uh like what was like the dynamics of like even just dealing with people. I understanding people thought process, how they perceive versus how you perceive from from my own personal view, and coming from where I came from.
Mhm.
So, and I did a lot of reading and reflecting. So I think that time was crucial to, again, pushing me to kind of like, um, evolve from like that time, and also like to become like really, okay with with who I was, and like leaning into like um the things that you know kind of resonated with me at the time.
Mhm. I appreciate that because again, like you're intentional about taking space, about sitting still, about learning more, about doing 'cause that's messy, hard work, right?
Yeah,
That's not comfortable. Those
and
moments of
I
healing
hope
people talk about.
yeah, I hope I'm not. That time is not like because I'm phrasing it like, yeah, I'm just taking time. Those are not comfortable times. Like you're in the forest. You in like in like you know what I'm saying? Like what they say, the wilderness. You in
It
the
will.
wilderness.
Yeah.
You're not like you're trying to kind of like um find a place that like you can find a new path. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mhm.
because obviously the path I was on wasn't really, it didn't feel like, not that it wasn't working, but that path, I had to choose another path because I did that path for like successfully for, years, talking about 15 years. But during
Yeah.
that moment, I think it was like, you got to find a new way to navigate because this path is not for you anymore.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a powerful place to be, a
Yeah.
difficult place to be though,
Yeah.
right? Because 'Cause you're shedding this skin, you're shedding your story that
Mhm.
you've been told that you lived and it worked while you lived it for that moment, but now you're creating a new story. So, do you bring some of this information, these processes to your healing circles with young men? Like, I think the power of hearing a man talk about this story and about this process. Do you bring that to young men?
Yeah, I mean, in my conversations, that specific healing circle I don't do anymore. That was a healing circle that I did while I was in NYPD.
Mhm.
But my conversations now with young men, or just even my peers and with men in general, like it's um uh about this is like, how do we continue to evolve and grow and become more aware of who we are? I talk to like, young man is, sometimes I'm like, do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? It's just like, I think that's a question we really gotta ask ourselves. Do you know who you are? Because sometimes like we get comfortable, like, right, being a version of ourselves and having belief systems again that were given to us. But like, did you choose that? Did you were you aware? Did you choose the religion you have, or it was just kind of something you grew into? Did you choose the career that you have, or it's just like, oh, that's something that my family always do. I just kind of got into that.
Mm,
Are we like conscious of like making decisions that like resonate with us? And if we don't know what resonates with us, because I think that was the case as a young man,
mhm,
how do you kind of start to experience life where you kind of like you have some conviction of who you are and what you want, instead of just getting like handed all these beliefs. So like I
mhm,
feel like with my life right now, I think, and with conversations I have with people, it's like these are the conversations that I have, and I think many people want to hear it. Like, um,
mhm,
I think these are important conversations because when when we talk about these conversations, individuals as we grow and evolve, then we could grow into communities that ultimately helps communities and societies as a whole. But it's all about planting seeds, and whether I'm talking to a young man or one of my peers.
Oh, that's hugely powerful, and I'm so glad you're doing that. You're asking these questions to young
Mhm.
men and to older men. Like, honestly, like I often post about this because I think there's so much there is so many unhealed people out
Mhm.
there, but I think particularly men.
Hmm.
It is something that I am so passionate about. I talk about it all the time because I'm raising 3 boys, as I told you, right? And they're
Yeah,
men, and
yeah,
part of that is really being so intentional with their healing,
yeah,
with having them be vulnerable and talk about things and know who they are. So, if you were to give advice right now, like if those are the questions they ask, what are some things I can do to start discovering more about who I am
yeah,
and my mission and my purpose, right? Like what are some places you could advise young men if they're watching right now, or parents who might have
yeah,
young men,
yeah. Yeah, I think this is an important conversation, and obviously, there's like no one size fit all like um,
right?
plan to do this. But for me, it was a lot of reflecting and writing and journaling and reading. Um, and also like there's been times where like I went into religion, right? So my family's are very religious, Baptist church. So religion's a tool I use, obviously, to navigate my journey. But it was also, and being honest, it wasn't working for me at one point. So and and I'm being honest, it's not like I'm saying that, to anyone on cause. I'm not saying that I don't like religion. It just wasn't like helping me navigate the challenges that it was. So I
Mm,
started just doing like having reading and thinking about like alternative spiritual methods, whether it's meditation or things like that, or whatever people may choose. But I was open to like new concepts of spirituality. Um, but again, that was just a path. But if the traditional paths work for you as well, I think you should continue to try it. But for like young men and men that I'm talking to, I think doing things like meditation and journaling and doing the things that people may think is soft, right? Doing healing circles, even that's the alternative traditional therapy, or group therapy. So healing circles was a method that worked for me and a lot of young men in these spaces. So um, I think it's being open, and for me, especially people of color, like we've done a lot of things traditionally for like a long time in our communities. But I think there's more awareness of what else is out there uh, to help us navigate our communities and navigate our mental health. So yeah.
mm.
Mm.
And being open and honest about doing it, right? Like, and no, I mean that's big. What you're doing is big and it's important. And I mean, from where you started, right, in terms of that 21-year-old Derby to
Yeah.
where you're standing now, how do you how have you evolved in your understanding of power?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, power is like something that is, especially coming from policing and law enforcement, power is a big deal. So my understanding of power has evolved, because power within law enforcement it feels like control, and it feels like force, right? It feels like a lack of understanding and how to have conversations and navigate challenges. So sometimes we abuse power, right? Because we feel like we have to show them, and um, but like power to me is has evolved because I think power doesn't have to be harmful. Power doesn't have to like abuse authority. Having power is about um, recognizing that there's ways to there's better ways to do things. So power is about, like, to me, being open to conversations and being open to new experiences. And I think, like, recognizing that, like, if we're consistently in spaces, and if there's systems that continually like abusing power, then we got to recognize, we got to figure out like, okay, who are the characters involved, or at least what is the culture within that continues that. So I think power for me just kind of evolved into being open to conversation and being open to new ways of doing things.
That's a transformative shift. Right? I mean, look, but it is, right? Because it's allowing power to be almost like this adaptive, evolving idea. And it's
Mhm.
power with, we often talk about, I've brought it up before on this show because it's called Pain to Power, right? Is
Mhm.
that there are different forms of power. And oftentimes we think of power over, but
Yeah,
power with is so much more transformative. Power
yeah,
with allows for multiple voices, allows for more questions, allows for more expansiveness, right?
yeah,
And that's what you're talking about. And I see in the chat, Jane says, power can show up with love. Absolutely, right? With
yeah,
love, with vulnerability. Power
yeah,
doesn't have to just be strength. Like strength comes from softness.
yeah. And that, but that term, that's the thing. Like when we talk about vulnerability, um, there's this thing that, especially in policing, where that's seen as
Mm,
weak, right? Like a
right.
Captain Derby is doing healing circles. What he's doing, he's having kumbaya. So this is like kind of the culture that sometimes don't leave space for vulnerability, but it ultimately, like, vulnerability is the power, and that's what allows authenticity as well.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it's healed you to be able to have that, right? To say
Yeah.
that out loud, it's not kumbaya circles, right? This is transformative community building. This is effective, responsive community engagement. This is so much more that people usually strive to do but don't do it effectively. Um, so, but it sounds like obviously you've had to deal with a lot of people's perceptions.
Yeah,
How do you
exactly.
do that? How do you get through that? Like that's a lot. I imagine like
Yeah.
there was navigating you had to do every day at work to get through comments and bias and other
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think is also having people around me that, like, supported me, and also, everyone who been on my side, the whole set squad, everyone who's like continually supporting. I think that's important to have people around you to keep you grounded, right? Like, oh, don't
Mhm.
listen to them. They're just, they're projecting, and just like understanding that, because if you don't have that reminder, you can really get caught up in having doubts, and you're going to have doubts, but like
Right.
you could be caught up in having those doubts, um, kind of push you away
Mhm.
from your purpose.
No, it's very important, right? Because you mentioned, like, having your individual understanding, but then that community, like, you have to have a village, and I see Set
Yeah,
Squad, which we're gonna talk about in a second. Set Squad in New York City says Captain Derby victorious, and the rest of the squad will be at the next mixer, 226 at Hatch, Brooklyn. Hope to see everyone there. Oh, well, I would have definitely come if I was local, but I'm not, but that sounds awesome, and so tell me about Set Squad. What is it? Where did it come from?
yeah,
Um, who's involved in it, and how do other people get involved in it?
yeah. So I mentioned before, like, really, as I transitioned out of policing and towards more uh, community oriented initiatives and projects, you know, had a collective of individuals. Shout out to Jaren Lou, shout out to Mimi Fox, shout out to Victorious, Eugene, Ashana, just the whole set squad. Um, so as I move towards and out of like government, and I wanted to do more things that involved community and involved uplifting people, uplifting young people. So we created Set Squad. social entertainment and travel squad. It's all about like really um, enjoying life, right? Not sitting
Mhm.
in low vibrations. I know that's a term in
Mhm.
our community. You sit in, it's all drama. I wanted to be around folks that were like about um, having fun, enjoying life, supporting community, advocating for community, advocating for young people, and also just really doing dope stuff. So we're having our next mixer, Sesquire mixer, February 26th at Hatch. This for those who haven't, those in Brooklyn, New York. But we're about creating experiences for Black and Brown folks, and just about uplifting each other. Cooperative economics. We help local businesses. We do a lot of branding for people. So yeah, that's what we're about.
Well, I love that, and definitely if you're in Brooklyn, you should go check it out. Follow them on Instagram as well, right? For certain. And actually, so to that point, before we leave, I want to make sure we know we're going to go and get your book. What else does everybody need to know? Where do they follow you? How do they stay, in touch with you? And anything up that's coming up for you that you want to elevate?
Yeah, definitely. Those who interested in my book is called Captain Derby's Promise. Again, it's about an experience I had as a captain at NYPD. Go to CaptainDerby'sBooks.com, CaptainDerby'sBooks.com. You could follow me also at Captain Derby's Books, social all platforms, IG, and you can follow me at Derby underscore Saint Fort, DERBY underscore STFORT, and don't forget to follow also Set Squad on IG, Set underscore Squad underscore NYC. But we have our events coming up. I'm also involved with schools locally in New York City. We're doing Captain Derby's Promise readings and also discussions around young people in law enforcement. So I'm doing that as well at schools. Anyone who's interested in having me do a book reading, or just come to the school to have a discussion about what community healing looks like, what is resolution between law enforcement and communities look like, just hit me up. Captain Derby's Books on IG. You could DM me. You could also email me at captainderbysbooks@gmail.com, captainderbysbooks@gmail.com, or derb.saintfort@gmail.com.
I love it. All the ways. Now, you mentioned only New York City schools, but do you travel? Because I have to say, I know a lot of people who watch this show are DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia folks. And I,
No, I'm definitely, I've traveled before and recently, so I'm open to travel. So anyone who would like to have me at their schools or wherever, just hit me up at derb.saintfort@gmail.com or captainderbysbooks@gmail.com.
I love it. And it
Thank
sounds like there's some great conversations. And I will say at the back of the book, for those of my educator friends and parent friends, is there are questions that you can reflect on and actually engage in conversations with your children. And your students. So you've already laid the foundation for some great conversations and deep storytelling. Like this really is a powerful book. Thank you so much. Before we close out, just real quick, if you had a chance to talk to the 21-year-old Derby who was entering the police force, what might be something you would say to him today?
Yeah. I would definitely say that you're on the right path, and just keep leaning in. Like that's kind of something. Keep leaning in. It looks scary, and there's a lot of uncertainty, um, but you're going the right way. So I would say that to my 21-year-old self.
That's beautiful. Keep empowering, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Derby. This
Yeah.
was such a beautiful conversation. I think you gave us all so much hope, so many new ways to approach things, and you're doing great work in your communities and for individuals. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
This
Appreciate
has been wonderful, so thank you. And so, this is what everything is about. We're talking about pain to power because that's the goal, is to turn our struggles into strength, and strength without connection becomes isolation. So what we know is how important it is to have humanity, to be proactive in our community building, in our relationship building, and we're focusing on the idea of power with, not power over. So to do all of this, Derby just shared, right? Coming home to yourself, return to community, return to your wholeness. And that's something we all need to be doing. So what I offer you as you leave tonight is just think about, who are you without the role you've been performing? So if you've had a uniform on, figurative or literal, right? Are you holding on to things that aren't yours? Are you holding on to stories and living them that aren't for you? Examine that, notice that, and follow me, follow Derby, because we will keep helping you to unlock some of those powers within you and recognize who you are underneath those stories you might be holding on to. So please follow Derby. You heard all the information, all the links are below as well. And please make sure you follow me. I am Brown Girl Interrupting, and Pain to Power is on regularly on YouTube. If you subscribe, you will get all the updates, and hit the bell so you know when we go live. I have this show. I have also my show, Maria's Musings, which might be renamed to After the Breaking soon. And I'm a writer. I'm on Substack. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, all of the things. So please make sure to follow me. Leave a comment. If you watch this whole show, leave a comment. Derby just dropped so many gems, so many pieces. Leave a thought of what resonated with you, what you're walking away with, what questions you may still have lingering. Thank you so much to everybody who joined tonight and watched us live, who was in the chat. We appreciate you. Thank you to my iRant family, and thank you to my amazing producer, Mr. Masick, Mr. Montaigne, Ja Logic, all of the names, and always showing up consistently and creating a beautiful space. So thank you, and thank you, Derby. Have a beautiful night. And peace, love, and light, friends.
Thank you. Take care.